ascendiste a la gloria, oh Cristo nuestro Dios, y alegras a tus discípulos con la promesa del Espíritu Santo.
I guess I'll start with Father Dolindo, who is not well known, not as well known as he should be, not as well known as he will be soon. He died, I believe, about 1970. He was a contemporary of Saint Padre Pio, who we all know, and Saint Padre Pio called Father Dolindo a saint. And in fact, when Saint Padre Pio got visitors from Naples, he said to them, "Why do you come see me? You have a real saint in Naples," meaning Father Dolindo. So anyway, he's also the source of the Surrender Novena, if any of you are familiar with the Surrender Novena. And so I'll read a prayer that he wrote. He wrote it as a transcription of the words of Jesus to the soul. When I read this, it's worthwhile thinking also about St. Faustina's diary, and the Jesus I trust in you, what Jesus said to St. Faustina, that it's lack of confidence in me, which is the only thing that limits the miracles that I am able to do in your life. So with that, let me go to a prayer of the servant of God, Father Dolindo Rotello. Jesus speaking to the soul. Why are you upset and agitated? Leave your cares to me, and all will be fine. I tell you truly, every act of true and blind reliance on me results in what you desire and will resolve all your difficulties. Abandonment in me does not mean being frustrated, becoming anxious and desperate, offering me your anxious prayer, that I may follow you and have your anxiety be a prayer. Let me interrupt already and say, if you really believe in divine providence, if you really accept who God says he is, then it is actually ridiculous ever to be anxious about anything, because absolutely everything that's being arranged in your life is being arranged most perfectly by somebody who is all-powerful, all-knowing, and loves you and cares about you more than you love and care about yourself. You can have dread, you can be repelled by what you see as the cross in your future. Jesus was, right, in the Garden of Gethsemane. Father, take this cup away from me, but nonetheless, not my will, but thine will be done. You can dread what the future holds for you, but you can't be anxious about what the future holds for you. You can't have any fear. You can't be worried that what's going to happen is something intrinsically bad. It can be something intrinsically painful. What happened to Jesus after the Garden of Gethsemane was certainly intrinsically painful, and therefore in our flesh we can have dread, but we can't have anxiety or fear as though something fundamentally bad was going to happen. Now, the context for understanding this is to recognize that God wants our true good, and our true good rests in making it to heaven. Our true good does not rest in winning the lottery or enjoying perfect health or marrying a supermodel. Just look at Tom Brady. Anyway, back to Father Dolindo. Abandonment means to shut the eyes of your soul in peace, moving your thoughts away from your troubles. And instead of thinking about your worries and pain, let me take over your troubles. Simply say, Jesus, you take over. To be worried, restless, and to think of the consequences of an event is the opposite of reliance. It is contrary to it. It is like a child who wants his mother to take care of his needs, but in the way he wants. With his whims and childish ideas, he only hampers her work. Shut your eyes and go with the flow of my grace. Do not ponder over your present moment and put away thoughts of your future as a temptation. Rest in me, believe in my goodness, and I swear on my love. Now, 2 comments on the last sentence that I just read. Shut your eyes and go with the flow of my grace. if you do feel anxious, if you are afraid of the future, one trick you can play is you can ask yourself, where is Jesus? Or you can ask Jesus, where are you? And if you ask yourself, where is Jesus? There's only one answer, which is Jesus is right here. Jesus is aware of all of this. Jesus cares about me, and Jesus is controlling everything. And therefore, the answer to that question, where is Jesus, is an antidote to anxiety. Now, the other thing I want to point out about the last two sentences is Father Dolindo says, put away thoughts of your future as a temptation. It is a temptation. We know who sends us temptations. We know where temptations come from. Temptations are of the enemy of our salvation. Temptations come from the one who wants to separate us from Jesus. And part of the problem, or part of the trick, is the following, which is Jesus is in full control of what happens to us. Jesus is not in control of what goes on between our ears. Jesus is not in control of what we think, what we imagine. We have free will, and therefore that's sacred ground that even Jesus won't tread on, because it would be overshadowing our free will. So we are free to imagine anything we want. And a lot of what we imagine is coming from Satan, is a temptation, because he wants us to imagine that something terrible is going to happen. He wants us to imagine that we have to take care of things ourselves. He wants us to imagine that, that we have to, run away from the policeman who's stopping us. I don't know what he wants us to imagine, but he wants us to imagine something that's not for our own true good. And so you have to put away the thoughts of your future as a temptation. I'll give a trivial example, but it's a very common one, which is how many of us begin to worry about money because we imagine that we will need money in the future and we don't have enough saved up. And what happens if this happens? And what happens if that happens? So we better forget about caring about God first and care about building up our bank account until we're secure enough to be able to relax and think about God first. Well, that's got it backwards. That's a temptation. That's Satan at work. Continuing. If you think like this, Jesus, you take over. I will indeed do it for you. I will comfort you, free you, and guide you. If I have to take you in a different direction from the one you're looking at, I will train you, I will pick you up in my arms, and you will find yourself like a baby sleeping in his mother's arms on the other shore. What gives you immense stress and hurts you is your reasoning over it, your thoughts and the pains it gives you. It is wanting at all costs to take care by yourself of what is afflicting you. How many things I can do, be it a material or spiritual need, when the soul turns to me, looks at me, and says to me, Jesus, you take over, and closes its eyes and rests in me. You do not receive many graces because you insist on getting them by yourself, but instead you will receive numberless graces when your prayer is in full reliance on me. Jesus said the same thing to St. Faustina. He said that the only thing that limits how much I can act in your life is your holding on to things and not surrendering them to me, not trusting me. That's why under that picture it says, Jesus, I trust in you. The more we trust in Jesus, the more freedom he has to take over the events of our life. Continuing. When you are in pain and you pray that I may act, you want me to act as you believe I should. You do not turn to me. Instead, you want me to submit to your ideas. You are like a sick person who does not ask the doctor for the cure, but tells him what the cure is supposed to be. How often do we do that, right? When we question divine providence, we're actually saying, oh, step out of the way, Jesus. I know better than you do what's good for me. How silly is that? Continuing. Don't be like this, but pray as I taught you in the Our Father. Hallowed be your name, which means, may you be glorified in this need of mine. Your kingdom come, which means, everything may work toward your kingdom in us and in the world. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven, which means you direct it as it seems best to you for the good of our eternal and temporal life. Again, one of the key impediments that we all of us have to accepting everything that happens to us as divine providence is the fact that what's best for us is often what's best for our eternal life, which matters a lot more than what's best for our comfort in this blink of an eye that we spend on earth. Remember, St. Teresa of Avila famously said, when we get to heaven, we'll realize that the worst life on earth, full of the most suffering anyone ever had, amounts to no more than a night in a bad inn. If you've ever been in a bad inn, we can say bad motel, right? Or even sleeping outside or something for the night, or spending the night in a phone booth because you can't find any shelter to sleep in. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it feels like the night's going to go on forever. It feels like an eternity, but it isn't. The next morning, it turns out that it was only a night in a bad inn, so to speak. Continuing. When you truly tell me, your will be done, which is the same then as to say, Jesus, you take over, then I do intervene with all my omnipotence, and I will resolve every situation, even if there is no way out. For example, do you see your sickness becoming worse instead of improving? Don't become anxious. Just close your eyes and tell me with trust, your will be done, Jesus, you take over. I repeat it, I do take care, I intervene like a doctor, and even do a miracle if it is necessary. Does the patient become worse? Don't be frightened. Close your eyes and say, Jesus, you take over. I tell you again, I will indeed do it for you, and there's no medicine more powerful than my loving intervention. I take over only when you close your eyes. The problem is you never sleep. You want to appraise everything, to think, to delve into everything. You choose to rely on human power, or worse, on men, trusting their intervention. This hampers my words and my will. Oh, how much I long for this reliance in order to assist you, and how much I grieve to see your anxiety. Again, this is what hampers Jesus' words and his will. This is what hampers Jesus' ability to intervene and take care of things, is when we don't trust him. Because we're basically saying, I own this situation, I'm not giving it to you, and he respects that. Satan does just this. He gives you the anxiety to remove me from you and throw you into human initiative. Trust only in me instead. Rest in me. Rely on me in everything. I do miracles in proportion to your complete reliance on me, with no thought of yourself. I do miracles in proportion to. That means twice as much complete reliance on Jesus, twice as many miracles. 0 reliance on Jesus, 0 miracles. I do miracles in proportion to your complete reliance on me, with no thought of yourself. I spread treasures of graces when you are in the most squalid poverty. If you have your own resources, even if you seek them, you are at the natural level. Thus you follow the natural way of things, which are often dominated by Satan. Now I can give some examples of this. Saint Teresa of Avila, when she established her reform of the Carmelite order, she insisted that the sisters have no source of income. It's very common in those days for convents to have a source of income. Maybe they owned rental property in the town, or maybe they, had a farm that they leased out, or whatever. But she didn't want that. She wanted all of the sisters to be completely dependent, hand to mouth, to basically have no food except what people bring them that day, and so forth. The Franciscans of the Primitive Observance, who are in the United States, they're a very noble new reform of the Franciscans. I assume this is the same case now. I was familiar with them about 20 years ago, and 20 years ago, they would not take any money. They would not save any money. They would not take any money for next week or for next month. I don't know whether it was for next month or for tomorrow or for next week, but they would not keep any money. If they were given more money than they needed for the month, they gave it away. They wanted to rely entirely on divine providence. And they basically testified that they could see the miracles, coming like a fire hose. Because they were trusting entirely on divine providence, they were never in want. St. Teresa of Avila said the same thing, that's the key to never being in want, is putting all of your trust in Jesus and not making any provision for your needs yourself. Continuing. Never a thinker or philosopher has done any miracle, not even among the saints. Only he who relies on God does divine work. When you see that things become complicated, say with your eyes closed, Jesus, I abandon myself to you. You take over, and stop worrying about it, because your mind is sharp, and for you it is difficult to distinguish evil, but trust in me, and let your mind wander away from your thoughts. Do this for all your needs, all of you do this, and you shall see great things, endless and silent miracles. I swear on my love. I shall indeed take over, you can be sure of it. Pray always with this loving confidence, and you shall have great peace and great fruits, even when I choose for you the grace of immolating yourself for reparation and the love that entails suffering. Do you believe it is impossible? Shut your eyes and say with all your soul, Jesus, you take over. Don't be afraid. I indeed will take care of you, and you shall bless my name in humility. 1,000 prayers do not equal only one act of abandonment. Don't ever forget it. There is no better novena than this. O Jesus, I abandon myself to you. Jesus, you take over. Thus ends the prayer of Father Dolindo. And there is a gold mine of wisdom and cure for our natural tendency to fear and anxiety and doubt God in that short prayer.
Ascendiste a la gloria, oh Cristo nuestro Dios, y alegras a tus discípulos con la promesa del Espíritu Santo,